If you have a true scary story you'd like to share with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way. And of course, thank you. Hey Raven, I love your channel and just wanted to add that I love how you give us little updates and talk to us at the beginning of each podcast. Thank you, I try my best. It humanizes you and makes you seem like more than a voice on the radio. Anyway, I've submitted a few of my true stories on here before, and every time you read one on the podcast, I feel temporarily famous. Anyway, I've been putting off sending this one in because it's so long, but it's certainly one of the craziest places I've lived. So I figured I would send it in. So here goes. In December of 2019, I started renting a new house in a small town in Nebraska from the parents of my boyfriend at the time. It was the type of small town where you can just be walking through the grocery store parking lot on a windy day, minding your own business, when a corn husk will slap you in the face. It sounds like Nebraska. The house was a little big for the two of us since it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, but we needed a place, so we moved in. At first, nothing really happened, but I started to feel like I was being watched. One night, soon before my alarm went off at 3 a.m., I work super early, I was awoken by 3 slow knocks on the wall right next to me. I asked my boyfriend, "Are you awake?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Was that 3?" And he confirmed that it was. I'm not sure if you've heard this, but 3 is supposedly supposed to be an evil or negative number. A few nights later, we heard a slight scraping noise and then a soft whoosh noise shortly after we went to bed. About 5 feet from our bedroom door was the dining room table and chairs. I whispered to my boyfriend that I thought a chair had moved, and he agreed. The next morning, when we were talking about it again, he asked, "What was that soft whoosh after the chair scrape noise?" I said that I didn't know, but I was wondering that myself. A few days later, I was talking to my boyfriend in the dining room. I pulled out a chair and sat down. The cushion that I sat on made a soft whoosh noise. My jaw dropped, and I looked at my boyfriend to see his eyes wide open. I said, "That's the sound. Holy crap, a freaking ghost pulled out the chair and sat down." We had a basement, and my boyfriend had a mantel clock on a shelf down there. One day, he went downstairs to find that the mantel clock had somehow fallen off the shelf. The craziest part is that it broke into 3 pieces and was frozen at 3 o'clock when it broke. One night, I had gone out grocery shopping and was putting the groceries away in the kitchen. I heard a super loud "Ha!" that echoed through the house. I jumped and then laughed and said, "Corey, you a-hole, you scared the crap out of me." The sound came echoing from up the staircase, so I went downstairs to tell my boyfriend that he got me. There was no one downstairs. I came upstairs to see my boyfriend walking in the front door. I said, "Were you just in the basement?" And he responded with, "No, I was hanging out at Oliver's house. Why?" And when I told him what happened, he got concerned, grabbed a knife, and checked every nook and cranny in the house. The front and back doors had both been locked. One of the scariest things that happened to me still haunts me. I went to bed early because I worked early. One night, I crawled into bed and lay down on my stomach to sleep. My boyfriend told me goodnight, turned off the light, and closed the door. I remembered I wanted to ask him something, and I called out, "Hey Corey," trying to get his attention to come back. He didn't hear, so I shouted louder, "Corey!" And then I heard a male voice loudly say, "What?" right behind my head. I was on my stomach and had never flipped over so fast in my life. There was nothing there. Corey came back in and said, "Did you call for me?" I told him what happened, and he said it wasn't him. It couldn't have been him anyways, because the voice sounded like it was a foot behind my head. The last weird thing that happened was when we were watching a movie. Right at the scary part of the movie, Dr. Sleep, we heard a super loud bang, and we both jumped up off of the couch. You know how when you hear a sound that you're not sure what it was or where it came from, and your mind imagines a possible scenario of what the noise was? Well, I imagined a car slamming into the front of the house. I looked out the front window and saw nothing. I started putting on my shoes to go investigate. My wimpy boyfriend said that he wasn't going out there with me, so I went alone. It was around midnight, and not only was there no car crash anywhere, but it was snowing. And there were no car or tire tracks on the street. I walked all around the house to see if there were any footprints in the snow, or any branches that had fallen off the tree onto the house. Nothing. I still don't know what that was. Shortly after we moved in, a coworker of mine saw my car at that address and asked me if I lived there. I said yes, and he said, "There's something weird going on in that house. My friend lived there and let me stay in the basement when I needed a place to stay. One night when I got home, I put my plastic soda bottle on the coffee table and plopped on the couch to go to sleep. A little while later, I woke up when my soda bottle opened on its own and sprayed soda all over me, as if it had been shaken up. I also got woken up on a different night when my phone, which had been on the coffee table, suddenly landed on me like it had been thrown. My boyfriend and I found a smaller place almost a year after we moved in, and were moving out. I was in the basement on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor. I had both lids on the toilet up and was dumping my dirty water buckets into the toilet and refilling with clean water. I had been doing this for a while when the toilet lids both slammed closed. The lids had been up for about an hour without falling, and I wasn't even in the bathroom at the time. And even if they had finally decided to fall after being up for so long, this was not the sound of them just falling. They had been pushed hard. I tried reenacting the sound and had to push hard to make them make such a loud noise. I said out loud, "I'm almost done down here, and then you can have the basement back to yourselves," to any ghosts that were possibly angry at me for invading their space. I pulled my phone out to take a picture of the basement and send it to my boyfriend to show how clean it was, and a large orb zoomed across my viewfinder right before I took the picture. My boyfriend's parents had lived in it while they remodeled it before we moved in, and they said that they had never had anything weird happen. But there was a man who had hung himself in the attached garage before they bought the house and remodeled the garage into 2 extra bedrooms. I think I may know why my boyfriend and I had such activity in that house. We had a toxic relationship, and he verbally and mentally abused me and gaslighted me for years before I got the courage to leave. I was always so stressed out, anxious, and walking on eggshells, scared of when he would blow up and start screaming at me about how worthless I was. I heard that ghosts are very sensitive to emotion and energies, and I think I was disrupting the energy of the house, and it made the ghosts upset, and that's why they were so active. Oh, I almost forgot. My mom stayed with me once and got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. She walked into the kitchen to check the time on the clock. She heard my voice right behind her say, "Mom?" And when she turned around, there was no one there. She said the creepiest part was that it had my voice. Anyway, that's my story. Also, in case you need a little supernatural-related comic relief after that, I have a short, funny story. After I left for college, my dad remodeled our house and added on a movie theater onto the house. Nothing even remotely strange happened before that, but after it was built, weird stuff started happening. My brother told my parents that there were spirits in the basement. The kitchen table was at the top of the stairs. My brother came up from his room in the basement at dinner time, and there was a loud bang a few moments later. My mom and dad looked questioningly at my brother, and he calmly said, "It's the spirits. They want me to come back down." My mom, ever the comedian, turned her head toward the stairs and called, "He's eating dinner right now." Hi, Raven. I love the podcast so much. It has a way of calming me even with the spookiest of stories with your calming voice. Thank you very much. It's now inspired me to share some of my stories. I believe they're all in different categories, so I will send them in separate emails. Thank you for that. As a primary school student, I had a tight-knit group of girlfriends, and we would often have sleepovers at each other's houses. We would choose a different friend's house each weekend, depending on whose place worked out best. One of our friends, Anna, would always claim that her house was haunted. We would giggle and tease her, not believing her stories about strange occurrences. Looking back, I regret not being more understanding and asking her more questions. I feel bad about how we'd react, because, in retrospect, I realize that her stories might have been genuine. Anna's house was indeed unusual. It had a top floor with all the essential rooms and a door that led to the set of stairs, which in turn led to an identical replica of the house on the bottom floor. Anna's family had converted the bottom floor into a self-contained living space for her, which made it the perfect spot for our sleepovers. We loved having the entire floor to ourselves, and it was like having our own private domain. The house's location next to the train track added to the eerie atmosphere, and I'm sure some people might say it was a recipe for paranormal activity. Anna would often tell us about the strange noises she heard at night, like knocking on the walls and a girl crying in the other room. We would dismiss it as her imagination, attributing it to her creative mind or her desire for attention, but I remember feeling an unsettling vibe on the bottom floor. The air felt thick, and the room seemed to have an off energy. I'm someone who's incredibly sensitive to energy, and even as a kid, I could sense that something wasn't quite right. One night, we had a sleepover at Anna's house, and she fell asleep early, leaving my two friends and I to chat and paint our nails in the bathroom. We lost track of time, and before we knew it, hours had passed. We were having the time of our lives, laughing and gossiping, but eventually we started to feel tired and decided that it was time to head back to the bedroom. When we opened the door to Anna's room, we were met with a sight that would haunt me for years to come. Anna was lying on her bed, with all fours spread out in a star shape. Her mouth was open slightly and her teeth were coated with a black substance. It looked like she had dipped her teeth in black paint. We screamed and ran out of the room, shaken to our core. We were all crying and holding on to each other, trying to process what we had just seen. We kept asking each other if it was real, if we were dreaming, or if Anna was just pranking us. But deep down, we knew that it wasn't a prank. The image was seared into our minds and we couldn't shake it off. After what felt like an eternity, we worked up the courage to go back to her room to check on her, but when we did, Anna was fast asleep in her normal position, with no signs of anything out of the ordinary. It took us a moment to wake her up, and when we did, she had no recollection of what we had seen. Her confusion seemed genuine, and we were left wondering if we had all just shared a collective hallucination. The incident left us shaken, and we didn't discuss it much afterwards. In fact, we barely mentioned it again, but the memory of that night did stay with me, and I would often find myself wondering what really happened. There were a few times where I would check in and ask if they remembered what happened, just to double check that I wasn't going crazy, and each time they would confirm to me that, yes, they remembered. But no, they didn't want to talk about it. Years went by, and our friend group lost touch. Even now, 13 years later, the memory of that night remains vivid in my mind. I sometimes want to message Anna and ask her if she remembers her house being haunted, and tell her I believed her all that time, and it's still stuck with me. but I worry about bothering her. If anyone has ever had an unexplained event similar to this, or any explanation for what this may have been, please write in, as I'm still so baffled to this day at 27 years old. This is in reply to the story of the person whose family kept telling them to quit researching the shadow people because it could attract them. First, I'll say what I believe a shadow person to be. So, we are three-dimensional, and we cast a two-dimensional shadow. It stands to reason that a three-dimensional shadow is cast by a person or object or entity that could be fourth-dimensional. Personally, that freaks me out. Are ghosts 4D? Or would that be something more powerful? Anyways, I also believe that the mind is a much more powerful thing than is commonly accepted. There are unclassified CIA files that go into this. I would think that a 4D entity would be much more powerful than we are, especially psychically. I would think that someone whose thoughts were consumed with thoughts of them is very hard to resist. Take care about the material that you and especially your children consume. It shapes your thoughts, and regardless if it's widely accepted, thoughts attract their subject matter. I've been listening for a couple of years and I love the show. Thank you. I joined this subreddit just to reply to that story. I honestly believe that the mind is so much more powerful than we have been led to believe. The media you consume affects your life, so be mindful of that. Hi, Raven. This isn't about me, but my younger sister, and I do have permission to tell this story. When my sister was younger, the things that she said were always a bit freaky. In fact, when my mother was pregnant with my sister, she went to a psychic, as she did once in a while back then. The psychic told her that my sister was going to be a psychic, and that she sensed it. Me personally, I don't believe in psychics, as I think most of them are scammers, but I think she was telling the truth about that. When my sister was a toddler, me and her often stayed at my grandparents' house on my dad's side. One afternoon, after we stayed over at my grandparents', my sister mentioned a man in a hat outside my grandparents' bedroom. My granddad is this old-fashioned guy with his ways. Best believe that he doesn't believe in the supernatural. Once he heard this, he was quick to deny my sister seeing anything at all. My grandmother spoke up a little later, saying that she thought that it might have been her dad since he wore hats. And a second story. Again, when my sister was a toddler and we all went in the car on outings, we often passed through this certain town called J-Town. It was the town over from ours and had an outdoor shopping center along with big supermarkets. There's no sign to say that you have entered this town through the road we always used. My sister would just know when we were in this town. Like the same spot on the road, she would say, "We're in J-Town." Most of the time, she didn't have any knowledge of where we were going. Like I said, she was a toddler. She sat in a car seat in the back and couldn't see through the window properly, if she ever looked out the window. The only thing she would be able to see is up, and that's the sky. That always confused me and my family on how she knew every single time. There are more instances, so I tried to ask my mother, and all she said was that my sister never slept during the night. She fell asleep after that, so I didn't get to ask her anymore. Dear Raven, I love your channel, and I think you're a great narrator and present many well-written stories on this site. Thank you very much. I begin this true but strange story by introducing myself. My name is Brad. I'm a 16-year-old male who goes to a California high school in 2025. I'm what you would call the stereotypical California beach boy. I have long blonde hair and blue eyes on a 6-foot muscular build. I love girls, the beach, girls, surfing, girls, and bodybuilding. I live near the beach, so it's easy for myself, my family, and my buddies to walk there. I also love to lift weights on the beach too in the weightlifting areas, because of the admiring young pretty ladies who stop to watch. This all happened the summer before 2024 when I was 15 years old and a sophomore in high school. One day I was just entering the beach with my surfboard under my right arm when I looked up at the Lifeguard tower and saw a most pleasing sight. There was a brand new lifeguard there that I have never seen before. She must have been new because I'm sure I would have noticed her before. This young lady was gorgeous, around my age with long flowing golden hair, with a very voluptuous physique. She was wearing a sailor bathing suit, white striped top with red tie and blue bathing suit bottoms. You could tell she was into physical fitness and worked hard at keeping her body in top shape. I could tell just by looking at her that she took her lifeguard job very seriously. She was sitting in the lifeguard chair, crossing her legs, and she smiled at me. As I passed her, I gave her a quick wave and a long wolf whistle, and then I laughed. As soon as I did, she threw her head back and giggled excitedly as she then gave me a huge, megawatt smile and waved back to me. Now, this girl was a stunner. She probably had many males giving her wolf whistles and staring at her all the time, asking for her name and cell phone number. I was standing right in front of her lifeguard tower now as I asked her name. Sailor, she giggled. My name is spelled S-A-I-L-O-R. Oh, like a sea sailor, I replied, smiling at her. Correct, she answered. That's a nice name, sailor. I like it. I answered back pleasantly. I could tell that she was flattered by my wolf whistle to her before as her face turned slightly red. So what's your name, cutie? She replied as she giggled excitedly. Brad, I beamed up at her. Well, I hope to see you around, Brad. She smiled as I waved goodbye to her as I returned her smile, and I prepared to enjoy the surf. When I was paddling out with the other surfers trying to catch a good wave, I could not stop thinking about the young, beautiful lifeguard named Sailor. I just had to get to know her better. Maybe get her number. She was cute and bubbly and just my type. I then caught a good wave and rode it in, and after a few hours of fun surfing, I hit the beach again hoping to see the lovely lifeguard, but she was gone, replaced by a young lifeguard named Jimmy. The next day I went to the beach with some fellow surfer pals of mine, and saw the lifeguard named Jimmy sitting up at the lifeguard tower. I asked Jimmy about the attractive blonde lifeguard named Sailor and when she would be on her shift so I would be able to catch her. Jimmy gave me a quizzical look and told me that there were no female lifeguards by that name. As a matter of fact, there were no female lifeguards working at this particular beach at the moment. I was surprised that Jimmy had told me this. Maybe the girl was very new and he had not seen her before. The next day was the start of the July 4th weekend, and I was disappointed that I did not see Sailor on her lifeguard tower, sitting there watching over the beachgoers. It was another guy that I knew named Tommy. I actually brought my little camera with me hoping to take fun pictures of the July 4th beach crowd. Seagulls and maybe, hopefully, Sailor too if she agreed to it. But there was no Sailor in sight. But just when I sat down on my beach blanket very dejectedly, I saw a pretty girl jogging up to me in her leopard print bathing suit. It was Sailor. Well, howdy, stranger, she said, giggling at me in her pretend Texas cowgirl drawl that I found most charming. I smiled up at her and she smiled back. I have a day off today since it's July 4th. Hey, I see you have your camera. Want to take a few photos of me? She asked sweetly. I readily agreed. As she began posing for me on the beach, I clicked away on the camera. She was a great poser, almost like a professional bathing suit model, and to my delight, as she tried to hit every sexy girl beach shot for me as she could muster. And my camera clicked away excitedly over her. Unfortunately, time went by fast. We were having so much fun together. Sailor then stopped posing and told me that she had to go home for dinner before her mom killed her for being late, as she started to jog away quickly. When she was jogging away, she told me to show her the beach pictures as soon as I had them. I promised her I would, as I watched her jog away. I then got angry at myself because I had completely forgotten to ask her for her phone number, and I watched her quickly disappear into the July 4th huge beach crowd. A few days later, I went to the store to develop the photos of Sailor, but sadly none came out. The July 4th beach crowd, the beautiful California rocky shoreline, and the photos of the seagulls came out fantastic. But none of the lovely young lifeguard named Sailor photos did. As you could imagine, I was very disappointed with this and vowed to try again with her for more pictures taking, and to get her number also if I could. The next day, I was lucky enough to see Sailor on the beach sitting prettily in her lifeguard chair. I told her that I was sorry, that the photos of her on the beach for some reason did not come out at all. She told me it was okay. I told her that I had my camera on me if she wanted to try again, and she nodded happily. She then crossed her legs, pumped up the right side of her long blonde hair, and started to smile sexily at the camera as I took 3 photos of her like that. "Great," she responded very happily. "Hope that beach shot comes out better for you this time." "I do also," I answered, smiling back at her. We both started to laugh together in happiness. I tell you, the more that I saw Sailor, the more I liked her. She was lovely and sweet. I then asked her out and she readily agreed. I asked her for her phone number, but she told me that she didn't live far from the beach and just gave me her home address instead, and said that she wanted me to pick her up at 8 o'clock that night. "Let's get to know each other better, Tiger," she said, giggling at me as I laughed and nodded my head in agreement. I could tell you I could not wait to pick up this gorgeous babe of a girl who was so nice. I dressed in a nice shirt, nice jeans, and shoes. Sailor's home address was in walking distance, so I walked there. When I got to her home, I saw a condemned brown house. The windows were all boarded up, and there was a for sale sign on the right boarded up window. I was in a state of shock. I was lucky enough to have an elderly lady ask me if I was looking for somebody. And I said, "Yeah, does a pretty girl named Sailor live here with her family?" I asked kindly. The elderly lady said, "Dear, that house has been abandoned for many decades. Nobody's lived there for years and years. Construction's thinking of tearing it down eventually because no one wants it anymore. The rats own the place now," she said, shaking her head sadly. I thanked the lady and sadly left with my head down. I was wondering why Sailor would lie to me about where she lived. Maybe she just stiffed me and did not really want to go out with me. But I knew that Sailor was too nice of a person to do this to a guy. I was lucky that the photo place was still open and wanted to see if my photos of Sailor would come out. When I picked the photos up a day later, they were still dark. Nothing came out, just more trash. I was confused why no photo of the lovely Sailor that I really liked were coming out, and her house was condemned. The next day I went to the beach and saw the lifeguard Tommy sitting there, and I asked him about Sailor. Tommy just looked at me like the lifeguard Jimmy did, confused. "Brad, there's no lifeguard beauty named Sailor lifeguarding here, not on this beach." He said that as I thanked him and left. I really wanted to see her again. There were so many questions I had to ask her. Why weren't her photos coming out at all? And why did she say that her home address was now a condemned home for many decades? But very unfortunately for me, I have not seen the lovely lifeguard named Sailor again on that beach, around town, or anywhere else. I know that I wasn't crazy. She wasn't in my imagination. I did see her. She appeared before me as a living, breathing young beach girl. When I thought to myself about it, Sailor did appear like those bosomy pinup girls of the past. Similar to the blonde bombshell Jane Mansfield wearing her sailor and leopard print bathing suit. Come to think of it, Sailor probably was not even her real name. She was just being flirtatious and playing with me while wearing her sailor bathing suit. I smiled at Sailor, and you smiled back at me, but something seems off by all of this. Very off. Why was I the only person ever seeing you? What's going on here? I'm completely dumbfounded and cannot make heads or tails of this situation. Thank you for letting me tell my story. Hello, Raven. So, I subscribe to my mom's phone because my mom absolutely loves your stories, and so does my sister and myself. Thank you. It was 2025, basically this year, and it was probably March or April 21st, and I was going to sleep when I woke up at 3 a.m., but it looked like it was 9 a.m. Then I heard crying, and at this time, my baby sister hadn't been born yet. She didn't even exist. I went out of the room to go check on my sisters, who both were in the same room, and my little sister didn't show any signs of crying, and my big sister didn't either. I was horrified. I ran to the toy room, and for a second, I thought I saw eyes in my window in my room. I stayed there alone. I tried to sleep, but I was super scared and couldn't sleep and stayed up the whole night. I told my sisters, but not my mother and my stepdad, and I'm still scared about what the hell that thing was. The following is less a paranormal story and more a response to the Djinn write-up that Tom did for me a while back that was in a paranormal episode, so if anyone's confused as to why this is in there, that's why. Hi, Raven. I got inspired to write this when I heard your segment on Djinn in a recent video. While I'm not Muslim, the Bible does mention several things getting close to Djinn. The first is the Elohim. These seem to be, according to some, are the fallen angels after Lucifer's rebellion who were put or let to be in charge of various nations by God, according to the Old Testament. God says each nation was given an Elohim. One of the most noteworthy instances in the Old Testament, Daniel is waiting for Archangel Michael, who says he was late because he was fighting the Prince of Persia. Some believe the Egyptian gods and other old gods were Elohim. Take in the book of Exodus the Pharaoh's magicians, also being able to turn their staffs into snakes who were taught or given this power by the Elegant. The Elohim have free will, and incredible power, but it isn't the true, real godly source. The other candidate could be the Nephilim, but they were said to be the children of these fallen angels and humans, who were giant great warriors. So, not what we're looking for. Anyway, I just think it's interesting that this idea of otherworldly beings that offer great power, but often at a great cost, exist across time, culture, and religion. If you or others who want to know more about this topic, the Weird Bible podcast did an episode on it. In 2014, during a hectic move to another state, my fiance and I decided to take a break and watch The Conjuring 2013. Everything was calm until the exorcism scene near the end, when our two cats began acting erratically, hissing, yowling, and running frantically, and our front door unexpectedly opened on its own. I wish it was more detailed, but our experience mirrors reports from viewers worldwide. In theaters, some people fainted or left screenings, and some cinemas even brought in priests after audience members sensed a dark presence. At home, others reported objects moving, strange noises, or unsettling feelings. Psychologists note that the film's realistic portrayal of terror combined with sound design and the based on a true story label can amplify fear and make ordinary environmental cues feel paranormal. While there's no verified supernatural explanation, the reactions, both ours and those of others, highlight how powerful psychological and environmental factors can be in shaping the way that we experience fear. So that, my friends, was this week's Paranormal Stories collection. Stories about the scary, spooky ghost stuff and such. However you want to look at that. Spooky, scary, I don't know. Listen, paranormal stories are interesting, and I love reading them, and they go across so many different subjects, topics, etc. that it's just fun to me. So, yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing. That'd be great too. And if you feel bold, you can leave a comment down below with your thoughts or any topics you want me to do. Kind of have November pretty much rounded out as far as topics go. But if you have something you want to recommend in December that isn't dark web stories, hint, hint. I said that because I'm probably going to do dark web in December, so don't recommend that. If you have anything you would want to recommend, do so. That'd be great. I'd appreciate it. I love to take suggestions, so. If you have a story you want to send in, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. You can also email it to astheravendreams@gmail.com. That'd be great as well. And if you want to join Patreon memberships, get early access to content like this and other things, depending on what you want to sign up for. That's also appreciated. You can also, I don't know, what else can you do? Super thanks. Tip to the channel. Go to the website, astheravendreams.com. Find me on my social media platforms, all the places where the podcast is. Buy my book. It's a good book. It's a book. It's a book that I wrote. You should consider it. That'd be cool. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I guess. More stories to come later this week. I do love and appreciate you, my friends. Yeah. All that said, hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are important. You're the best that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.